The morning was quiet, but something heavy hung in the air. A man stood outside a tall glass building. His shoes were old, his shirt slightly faded, and his black bag looked worn. But his eyes were sharp, calm, focused. His name was Daniel Ward. He looked up at the company's name above the door. Grayson and Marks Corporations. He smiled slightly. Not out of joy, but out of memory. This was the same company that had once thrown him out, laughed at him, called him useless. Now he was back, but not for revenge, for something greater. Daniel walked through the shiny lobby. A young receptionist looked up and frowned. "Can I help you?" she asked, a little cold. "Yes," Daniel said calmly. "I have an appointment with Mr. Lewis at 9 a.m. She looked him up and down. His clothes didn't match the fancy place. He looked like someone delivering mail, not someone meeting the CEO. Are you sure?" she asked. Daniel didn't react. He just smiled. "Yes, I'm sure." Soon, a junior assistant came to take him upstairs. On the elevator ride, Daniel stayed quiet. The assistant kept glancing at him, confused. Who is this guy? Why is he meeting the boss? The assistant thought. The elevator opened on the 25th floor. A long hallway led to the main boardroom, where high-level meetings happened. Glass walls, big table, leather chairs, expensive paintings. 10 well-dressed people were already inside. Daniel stepped in. Silence. Then a soft laugh. One of the executives, a tall man with perfect hair and a gold watch, leaned back and said loudly, "Sorry, sir, the maintenance door is downstairs." The others chuckled. One woman whispered, "Maybe he's here to fix the AC." Daniel said nothing. He slowly walked to the seat marked Guest, pulled it out, and sat down. No anger, no emotion, just quiet. Mr. Lewis, the CEO, wasn't there yet, but the room was, already filled with judgment. Another man, Mr. Carl, looked directly at Daniel and asked with a mocking tone, "So, you're the investor?" Daniel turned to him, looked into his eyes. "Yes." "Strange. We expected someone else," Carl said. Daniel smiled again, calm, like he knew something they didn't. Minutes later, the door opened. Mr. Lewis walked in, adjusting his tie. He stopped when he saw Daniel. For a second, his face changed. He recognized him, but he quickly covered it up. "Ah, you must be Mr. Ward," Lewis said, trying to sound confident. "Welcome. I see you've already met our board." Daniel stood up and shook his hand, firm but not aggressive. "Thank you for the invitation," he said softly. They all sat down. Lewis began to speak about numbers, sales, and future plans. Most in the room were bored. They didn't think Daniel was important. Some looked at their phones. One man yawned. But Daniel listened to every word. After 20 minutes, Lewis said, "So, Mr. Ward, tell us, what exactly is your plan if you become a part of this company?" Everyone finally looked up. It was the first time they gave him real attention. Daniel reached into his old bag. He pulled out a thick file. Black cover, clean papers. On top was a letter marked with a golden seal. The room changed. The HR manager, Ms. Jenna, took the file and opened it. Her eyes widened. This is a full acquisition offer," she said slowly. "Sir, are you saying you want to buy the company?" Now they were all paying attention. The room fell into silence. Even Mr. Lewis looked confused. "Wait, what is this?" he asked, grabbing the file. Daniel calmly replied, "That is a legal offer to purchase Grayson and Marks. It includes 62% shares, approved and cleared." "But that's not possible," Carl said loudly. "You're just some outsider." "How?" Daniel interrupted for the first time. His voice didn't rise, but it became sharper. 10 years ago, I was not welcome in this room. I was just a small analyst, one of the first to arrive, and the first to be thrown out. Now, some of them started to remember. The quiet intern, the one they mocked, the one they fired unfairly. I left with nothing. Daniel continued. But I learned. I worked. I built something better. From the ground up. He opened a second folder. Inside were the documents of his own company. Ward Technologies, one of the biggest rising firms in the country. Mr. Lewis stared at the papers. Sweat formed on his forehead. Why didn't we know this before? Daniel looked around the room. Because I didn't need to be seen. I just needed to be ready. One woman from marketing whispered, "He's the mystery buyer? The one we've been chasing for weeks?" Daniel nodded, then stood up. He walked slowly to the front of the room, the same spot where they all used to give orders. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," Daniel said, voice calm. "But I do believe in something. Respect should never depend on clothes." Or titles. He looked straight at Carl. "You saw a man in old shoes and laughed. You didn't ask his name. You didn't ask why he was here. You saw nothing because you chose not to look." The room was dead silent now. No one laughed. No one smiled. They were all watching a ghost from the past who had come back as their future. Daniel closed his file. "This company will change," he said, "and starting today, I'll be in charge of that change." Then he said something that would stay with them forever. "I'm not the outsider anymore. I'm your new boss." And with that, he walked out of the boardroom, leaving behind open mouths and closed egos. 10 years ago, Daniel Ward was just a name on a forgotten desk. No one in the company knew him well. No one cared to. He was an intern, quiet, polite, always early, always working hard. He didn't talk much. He listened. He learned. He believed that if he worked honestly, people would see his worth. But this wasn't that kind of place. Daniel remembered his first day clearly. He wore his best shirt, which had one missing button. He had borrowed a tie from his neighbor. His shoes were polished until they shone, though they had cracks underneath. When he walked into Grayson and Mark's that morning, his heart was full of hope. He thought he was starting his future, but inside those glass walls, something else waited. On that first day, his supervisor, Carl Benson, didn't even shake his hand. "Just sit over there and don't get in the way," Carl had said, pointing to a corner table. Daniel had smiled and nodded. He was used to being overlooked. It didn't bother him, yet. Over the weeks, Daniel worked long hours. He organized reports, fixed data errors, even stayed late when no one else did. He didn't complain, but the more he gave, the more invisible he became. One afternoon, the team was planning a big project. Everyone gathered in the boardroom. Daniel sat quietly, taking notes, waiting for a chance to speak. He had an idea, a smart one, something that could save the company thousands. He raised his hand. Carl rolled his eyes. "You? You don't even have a proper degree yet. Sit down, kid." The room laughed. Daniel's hand dropped slowly. No one asked what the idea was. Weeks passed. Daniel kept working. He kept believing things would change. But the truth was, no one there saw him as a real person. Just a poor boy from a cheap college. A name they barely remembered. They mocked his clothes, whispered behind his back. Some even made fun of how he brought lunch from home. "Does your mom pack your food too?" one joked. He smiled quietly. He didn't tell them his mother was in the hospital that week, that he worked part-time at night just to pay for her medicine. Then came the worst day. A mistake was found in the company's budget sheet. Carl had made the error, but he blamed Daniel. The intern handled that part. Carl lied in front of everyone. Daniel stood there, shocked. "Sir, I never—" "Save it," Mr. Lewis snapped. "You're done here." Just like that, Daniel was fired. No one asked for his side of the story. No one defended him. No one cared. He walked out. That day in the rain, his bag was half open. His papers were soaked. His shoes filled with water. But what hurt the most was his father's silence when he came home. His dad had worked hard all his life in a small repair shop. He never asked for much, only that Daniel make something of himself. And now Daniel had lost it all. His mother, still weak from surgery, cried quietly in the other room. That night, Daniel sat outside under the broken streetlight. He felt empty, angry, worthless, but somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "You don't need their respect. You just need to prove they were wrong." From that night on, something changed. He made a promise to himself. "I won't fight them with anger. I'll fight them with success." Daniel started small. He worked in a local cafe during the day. At night, he watched free online classes. He studied business, tech, leadership. He made a list of every mistake he saw in Grayson and Marks, and how he would fix them if he had the chance. For 2 years, he lived like that. No vacations, no weekends, no rest, only work and learning. One day, a kind old man named Mr. Rowland, who owned a tech repair shop, noticed Daniel. "You've got fire in your eyes, son," he said. "Ever thought of starting something of your own?" Daniel laughed. "With what money?" Rowland smiled. "Money is just a tool. Ideas, those are gold." That evening, Daniel and Rowland talked for hours. 1 week later, Rowland gave Daniel a corner of his shop for free, to start whatever dream he had. That's where Ward Technologies was born. At first, it was just a desk, one second-hand laptop, and a notebook full of ideas. Daniel started fixing old phones, then designing software for local shops, then offering business automation to small stores. People loved his work because he listened, because he cared. Word spread. Slowly, investors came. Slowly, the business grew. But Daniel stayed out of the spotlight. He didn't want interviews. He didn't want pictures. He wanted focus. And he never forgot the boardroom that laughed at him. 8 years later, his company was worth millions. He had more money than he ever dreamed. The next morning, the city was covered in clouds. The sun was hidden, as if watching quietly from behind. Inside the tall glass building of Grayson and Marks, tension filled the air. The boardroom was still echoing from the shock of yesterday. Daniel. Ward had left behind more than silence. He had left a message. "I'm your new boss." But that was just the beginning. Daniel arrived early, just like always. Same shoes, same black bag. He stepped out of the elevator on the 25th floor. Everyone who passed him now nodded quietly. Some looked away. Others smiled nervously. The ones who had laughed before were suddenly respectful. Inside the boardroom, the top executives were already gathered. Mr. Lewis, the former CEO, sat quietly, his usual confidence gone. Carl, the one who mocked Daniel years ago, kept checking his phone, pretending to be busy. Everyone was waiting for what Daniel would say next. Daniel entered, no security. No loud entrance, just a man with calm eyes and full control. He placed his file on the table and looked around. "Let's begin," he said. "Step 1, restructuring. This company has talent," Daniel began, "but it's being suffocated by ego and fear." He pointed to a large screen. A chart appeared showing departments, employees, and performance data. "Some of you are good people stuck under bad leadership. That ends today." He looked directly at Carl. "Effective immediately, you are removed from your position. You will receive a fair severance, but you will not continue here." Carl stood up, red-faced. "You can't just—" "I already have," Daniel interrupted, calm but firm. "This company belongs to me now." Carl grabbed his things and stormed out. No one followed. Step 2. Listening. Daniel turned to the staff seated quietly in the room. Most of you never had a voice here. From now on, you will. He handed out small tablets to every person. There's a file inside. Write one thing. You believe this company needs to change. Just one. And your name is not required. There was silence. Then slowly, one by one, they began typing. It was the first time anyone asked them what they thought. Step 3. The hidden team. Daniel opened another file. In the past 2 months, I sent people to observe this company, not to spy, but to understand it. You didn't see them. You didn't know them. They were janitors, assistants, even interns. He smiled. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The executives shifted in their seats. Daniel continued. Those people reported everything. And thanks to them, I now know who works and who only pretends. Suddenly, he called out names. Lena Martinez, front desk receptionist. She helped clients even when others ignored them. Tariq, the mailroom boy, he solved a technical issue that the IT team couldn't fix. Jasmine Cho, junior analyst. Her idea saved the company over $50,000 last quarter, but no one listened. Daniel looked at Jasmine. You're being promoted. Her eyes widened. She looked like she might cry. Me? But you're exactly what this company needs, Daniel said. Smart, honest, undervalued. Until now. The room felt different now. Hope was slowly replacing fear. People were no longer thinking about Daniel's shoes or bag. They were thinking about the future. Step 4. A new culture. Daniel walked toward the large Grayson and Marks logo on the wall. This company was built on pride. Now, it will be built on purpose. He took out a small folded piece of paper. It was his old termination letter. 10 years ago, I was fired from this company for a mistake I didn't make. No one asked for the truth. He dropped the letter into the paper shredder beside the table. The sound echoed in the silent room. That version of this company ends today. Daniel turned to the window. Rain had started to fall outside. He placed both hands on the glass and took a deep breath. Behind him, the boardroom was still, everyone frozen, listening. Then he turned back. This won't be easy. Change never is. But if you're willing to work hard, stay honest, and treat people with respect, then you have a place here. If not, the door is always open. One by one, people nodded, some smiled, some cried silently. For the first time, the boardroom didn't feel cold. It felt human. As the meeting ended, Daniel stepped out into the hallway. A young woman ran up to him. Sir, my name is Alina. I was hired last month. I just wanted to say thank you. I've never felt seen before. Daniel nodded gently. You were always visible. They just didn't look. He walked away as the rain outside began to stop. The clouds were still heavy, but a small line of sunlight broke through, and like the company, that light was just beginning to shine. The office was quiet the next morning. Daniel sat alone in the CEO office, looking at the city skyline. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, showing him the same world that once ignored him. But today felt different. Today, the past had returned. His new assistant, Alina, knocked gently. Sir, there's a visitor waiting. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says you'll know her name. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What's her name? Emily Carter. The name hit him like cold water. Emily, from back then. He stood slowly. Send her in. A minute later, the door opened. Emily stepped inside. She hadn't changed much. Sharp suit, confident walk. The same calm, professional smile she always wore when she was head of HR. She was the one who handed him his termination letter 10 years ago. Daniel didn't stand. He just watched her as she walked in and sat across from him. Long time, she said softly. Yes, Daniel replied. Not long enough, maybe. She looked down, a little embarrassed. The smile faded. I deserve that, she said. I wasn't kind to you. Daniel didn't say anything. You were just an intern. And I didn't think twice when Carl blamed you. I signed the letter without asking your side. You didn't even look at me, Daniel said quietly. Emily nodded. I know. And I'm sorry. There was a moment of silence. Only the soft hum of the city below filled the air. Then Emily opened her bag and took out a small notebook. It was old, worn out. The corners were torn. Daniel leaned forward. He recognized it instantly. That's mine, he said, surprised. I found it in the HR archives years later. You must have left it behind when you were fired. She handed it to him. It's full of your ideas, your drawings, your dreams. Daniel opened the notebook. His handwriting was still there. His first project design, a business chart he once showed Carl, and a small list titled, Someday I Will. He had written, Start my own company, help my parents live better, make sure no one feels invisible again. He closed the notebook slowly. Why bring this now? Emily took a deep breath. Because I'm not here for a favor. I'm here for help. Daniel looked at her. Help? She nodded. I was fired from my last job 6 months ago. I spoke out against some unethical practices, and they pushed me out quietly. I've been applying everywhere. No one's calling back. I thought maybe you'd give me a chance, even after what I did to you. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Part of him wanted to say no, to remind her of how alone he felt when she stood with Carl instead of the truth. But another part of him, the stronger part, knew something else. Revenge doesn't build. Grace does. He looked her in the eyes. What are you good at, Emily? She blinked. I've managed teams, designed internal systems, and handled crisis HR. Good, Daniel said, because we're rebuilding everything here. And I want people who've made mistakes, but learned from them. Emily sat still for a second, then slowly smiled. You're giving me a chance? Yes, he said, because someone should have given me one back then. But they didn't. And because now, I can. She stood up and reached out, her hand. Thank you. I won't forget this. Daniel shook her hand. I hope not. Later that day, as Emily was getting her badge made, Alina entered Daniel's office again. Sir, there's another matter. What now? He asked, sipping tea. It's Carl. He's been talking to a few old board members. There's a rumor. He's planning something. Daniel set the cup down. Let him. But, Alina, he said with calm confidence, I built my company from nothing. I've survived worse than office politics. Let them try. That night, Daniel walked down to the building's old archives. Rows of forgotten files, dusty shelves, long shadows. He found the HR file room and pulled open the drawer marked Intern 10 years ago. There it was. Ward, Daniel. Inside were old performance reports. One caught his eye. Shows promise but lacks polish. Background too simple, not suitable for leadership. Carl Benson. Daniel stared at the paper, then smiled. He folded it, put it in his pocket, and whispered, Watch me now. Outside, the moon had risen, and inside the walls of Grayson and Marks, something new was rising too. A company built on fairness, a team built from scars, and a leader who refused to forget, but also refused to hate. It started with a system error. The lights flickered in the meeting room. One of the servers went offline. Emails got delayed. Nothing big, just small annoying problems. But Daniel noticed. He always noticed. He stood by the window, arms crossed. watching the digital board flash red warnings. "Too many small mistakes," he said softly. "It's not random. Someone is testing the system." Alina walked in holding her tablet. "It says it's just routine glitches." Daniel shook his head. "Glitches don't have patterns. Sabotage does." Later that day, in a quiet coffee shop across town, Carl sat in a booth with 3 other men in suits. "He's rebuilding everything," Carl said angrily. "The interns love him. The board is warming up to him. If we don't act fast, we'll never get back in." The man across from him leaned in. "You said you still had access?" Carl smiled. "I do. My name was never removed from the back end of the financial server. One little error, and Daniel will look like a fool." The others nodded. "Do it quietly," one said. "Make it look like his mistake." Carl grinned. "By the time they realize what happened, he'll be gone." Back at Grayson and Mark's, Daniel called an emergency meeting with IT, finance, and HR. Emily stood beside him. She had just joined the company again, and already she noticed the tension. "Someone's testing us," Daniel began. "They're checking where the weak points are. We stop them now, or we clean up a mess later." He turned to Emily. "You used to work with Carl. What would he do first?" She took a deep breath. "Carl never gets his hands dirty. He uses people, makes others take the fall. He'll likely target something big but silent, like payroll or client contracts." That night, Daniel didn't go home. He stayed in his office, reviewing every digital log, every system access point. Alina brought him coffee at midnight. "You need sleep," she said gently. Daniel smiled. "I need proof." At 2:43 a.m. he found it, a login from Carl's old ID, hidden under a maintenance label. But still active. He copied the logs and sent them to legal and IT. Then he picked up his phone. "Emily," he said, "I need you in early tomorrow. We're going to set a trap. The next day." The office ran like normal. Staff came in. Emails flowed. Meetings were held. But behind the scenes, Daniel had changed everything. They set up a fake server, a mirror of the real payroll system. Then they sent a quiet message through the system. "New bonus list uploaded. Review before final approval." It was bait, and Carl took it. At 3:17 p.m., Carl's old ID accessed the fake server. He downloaded the file, made changes, and uploaded a new version, removing bonuses for junior staff and increasing them for senior executives. Then he sent an anonymous tip to the board. "CEO Daniel Ward is giving out secret bonuses to his favorites." But the board didn't panic, because Daniel was already there. He stood in front of the board, file in hand, projector ready. "Before you make any decisions," he said, "I'd like to show you how someone tried to make me look guilty." He displayed the login data, the fake file, the edit logs. Then he played a voice recording, Carl's meeting at the coffee shop, recorded by one of Daniel's quiet observers. Silence. Then one board member finally spoke. "He tried to frame you." Daniel nodded. "And if we didn't act fast, he might have succeeded. But this company isn't weak anymore." The boardroom erupted into quiet whispers. Then the chairman stood. "Carl Benson is now permanently blacklisted from Grayson and Mark's and all its partner firms. Legal action will follow." Later that day, Daniel stood on the rooftop of the building. The sky was gray, but there was peace in the air. Emily joined him. "You saw it coming, didn't you?" "Yes," Daniel said. "People like Carl never leave quietly." She looked out at the city with him. "Do you ever get tired of fighting?" Daniel paused. "Sometimes. But I remember what it felt like. To be alone in that elevator. To be laughed at. To be invisible." He turned to her. "And I promised myself, no one else would feel that way under my roof." Far below in the lobby, a young intern helped a lost visitor find their way. No one shouted, no one mocked. And somewhere deep in the building, someone whispered, "It feels different here now." They were right, because true leadership doesn't fear attacks. It prepares for them. And Daniel Ward was just getting started. The large conference hall was packed. Every chair was taken. Staff from all floors of Grayson and Marks had come to listen. Cameras were set up. Reporters waited with pens in hand. Even the board members sat in the front row, watching quietly. The lights dimmed. A soft spotlight lit up the stage. Then Daniel walked in. He wore a simple black suit. Nothing fancy, no expensive pin. Just confidence, calm, and a quiet strength. In his eyes, Alina stood backstage holding her breath. Emily was beside her, whispering, "He's about to shake the room." Daniel stepped up to the mic. He looked at everyone, from the interns sitting near the back to the older directors up front. And then he smiled. "I want to tell you a story," he began. The room fell silent. Not a phone buzzed, not a whisper, just his voice, steady and real. Many years ago, a young man came to this company for an internship. He wore second-hand shoes. His tie was borrowed. He couldn't even afford the bus some days. On his first day, he got lost in the building. No one helped him. In the elevator, 2 executives laughed at him, called him just another poor kid with no future. Some people in the audience lowered their eyes. Some whispered to each other, but Daniel kept speaking. He worked hard, every night. He made mistakes, but he tried. One day, a report went missing, and they blamed him. No one listened. No one gave him a second chance. They fired him without even letting him speak. Emily wiped her eyes quietly. She remembered that day. She remembered her role. "That young man was me." The crowd gasped. Murmurs spread across the room. Daniel waited. "I left with nothing, no money, no job, just pain, and a promise to myself that if I ever came back, if I ever had power, I'd use it to lift people, not break them." He looked across the crowd. "This company is now under new leadership, and this leadership believes in second chances. We will hire not just for skills, but for stories. We will listen before we judge. We will help before we fire." The audience clapped. But Daniel wasn't finished. He walked closer to the edge of the stage. To those who feel unseen, interns, assistants, staff who eat lunch, alone, know this: I see you, because I was you. And to those in power, if you ever think status gives you the right to disrespect others, remember. He paused, then looked directly into the camera. You never know who you're talking to. They might be your boss one day. The applause started slowly, then it rose, louder, stronger, wave after wave. Even the board stood. Some were teary-eyed, others simply clapped hard, knowing a shift had come. Backstage, Alina whispered, "He didn't just give a speech. He gave everyone hope." Emily nodded. He turned pain into power. Later that evening, Daniel sat alone in his office. The city outside was golden with sunset. He stared at an old photo on his desk, him at 20, standing outside this same building holding a rejection letter. He smiled. Then his phone buzzed. It was a message from one of the interns. "Sir, I've never told anyone before, but I grew up homeless too. I thought I'd never make it. Thank you for making me believe again." Daniel closed his eyes. Let the moment sink in. Across the city, Carl sat in a dark apartment, watching the speech replay on his tablet. His face was tight with regret. The man he once called nothing had become everything Carl failed to be. Back at Grayson and Marks, in every hallway, break room, and quiet corner, the mood had changed. People looked at each other differently, with more respect, with more heart. Because that's what true leadership does. It doesn't just change rules, it changes people. And Daniel Ward had just proved, the ones you ignore today may lead you tomorrow. It was a normal Wednesday. Grayson and Marks was alive with activity. Staff moved through the halls with purpose. Laughter echoed from the break rooms. Something had shifted ever since Daniel's powerful speech. People were working with each other, not for each other. But then, the front desk buzzed. A security officer picked up the phone. "Sir," he said to the receptionist, "you might want to get Mr. Ward. There's someone asking for him. Says it's urgent." Upstairs, Daniel was finishing a meeting with the finance team when his phone vibrated. One message. "You have a visitor. You'll want to see this." He excused himself and headed toward the elevator. The same one. The old silver doors slid open, and for a brief second, he remembered the first time he stepped inside. Nervous, poor, laughed at. Now, things were different. But what waited for him in the lobby made his steps slow. Standing near the front desk was a man in a gray jacket, thinning hair, a limp in his right leg. He looked older, tired, but familiar. It was Mr. Hendricks, the elevator manager, the man who once humiliated Daniel, who pointed and laughed when Daniel fumbled with his badge, who made him feel small. Daniel froze. For a second, it felt like time rewound. Mr. Hendricks looked up and saw him. His eyes widened. He stepped forward slowly. "Daniel." "Ward?" Daniel nodded. The old man swallowed hard. "I didn't know it was you. I saw your face in the news, in the videos, the speech, the new CEO of Grayson and Marks. I couldn't believe it. So, I came to say something I should have said years ago." Daniel stood silently. Everyone around them paused. Even the security guards watched. "I'm sorry," Hendricks said, his voice shaking. "Back then, I thought I was just being tough, just doing my job. I didn't think you mattered, and I was wrong." He looked down. "I've been working odd jobs ever since I left here. Life didn't go how I planned, but when I saw what you've done with this company, I just had to come." He paused again. Not for money. Not for help. Just for peace. The room was quiet. All eyes were on Daniel. He looked at the man. The same man who once made him feel worthless, who had laughed when no one else helped. And yet, Daniel didn't look angry. He walked closer, slowly, then said, "Do you know what saved me that day?" Hendricks looked confused. Daniel continued, "When you laughed at me, someone else didn't. A janitor gave me directions. A lady from HR smiled and handed me tissues in the hallway. Small things, quiet kindness. That's what I remembered. Not just the pain, but the help." He paused. "And now I believe in giving people what they need, not what they deserve." Daniel turned to the front desk. "Give Mr. Hendricks a visitor pass." The staff blinked. "Sir?" "Give him a tour. Let him see what this place has become." He looked back at the old man. "You can't change the past, but maybe today you can help someone else who feels lost." Hendricks looked stunned. Then, tears filled his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'll do better this time." Later that day, Daniel sat with Emily and Alina in his office. He told them what happened. Emily was quiet. Then she said, "Do you think people can really change?" Daniel looked out the window. "Only if someone gives them the chance." In the lobby, Hendricks finished his tour. He didn't rush out. Instead, he walked to the elevator, held the door open for a nervous intern, and smiled. "First day?" The intern nodded. "Yeah, I'm scared I'll mess up." Hendricks chuckled. "Let me tell you a secret, kid. Even the CEO once got lost in this building, and the door closed, because life is full of circles. And sometimes, the people who once hurt you come back to learn from you." The boardroom looked the same as always, Long table, leather chairs, and cold glass windows that stretched high above the city. But today, it felt different. There was tension in the air. Not the usual kind from numbers or profits, but something deeper, something that reached the heart. Daniel sat at the head of the table. For the first time, he wasn't the one being judged. He was leading the room. The board members sat quietly. Some looked nervous, others unreadable. Alina and Emily stood near the back, watching everything. They knew this meeting wasn't just about policies. It was about truth, about change, about giving a voice to those who were always ignored. The chairman, Mr. Goldstein, leaned forward. "Mr. Ward," he began, "we're here to vote on your final proposal. You've made bold changes in a short time. You've fired old managers, hired from places we never considered. You gave the janitor's son a chance to lead a design team." He glanced down at a file. "Now you want to change how we promote people. You want to remove titles, give open chances, remove bias, and train leadership from the ground up? That's not how this company has worked for 80 years. Daniel nodded. "Exactly. That's why it's time." He stood up, walked slowly toward the center of the room. "This isn't about money or image. This is about dignity. This company has been run like a fortress for too long. The only people who got ahead were those who already had power. That ends today." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Daniel continued. "We're not just building a business. We're building people. And when you build people, you build something that lasts longer than profit." He looked them all in the eyes. "You asked me to lead, so let me lead. Let me show you a company where no one is too small, where no one eats lunch alone, where no one feels invisible." Silence. Then the chairman spoke again. "You know, I voted against you becoming CEO." He leaned back. "I thought you were too young, too emotional, too different." A few board members nodded. He looked at Daniel again. "But after seeing what you've done, after seeing the people in this company smile again," he smiled faintly. "I was wrong." Then he raised his hand. "I vote yes." One by one, hands rose around the table, some slow, some fast, but all of them rose, unanimous. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Let it sink in. Not the power, but the meaning. He turned to Alina and Emily. They both clapped silently. Emily had tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. Alina nodded. "No, we did." Later that evening, Daniel sat in the CEO office, alone. The city lights outside twinkled like stars. The room was quiet, but peaceful. On the desk lay a photo, his younger self, outside the same building, holding a rejection letter, and next to it, a new frame, a photo of the staff smiling under the banner. "Welcome to the new Grayson and Marks." There was a soft knock. It was the same intern from the elevator. He held a small note. "Sir, someone left this at reception for you." Daniel opened it. Simple handwriting. No name. It read, "Thank you for changing more than just a company. You changed a life." Daniel smiled, not because he won, but because he finally saw this was never about revenge. It was about redemption.